Today's class is going to be a really soothing practice to help with adrenal fatigue. So if you've been very stressed or anxious, or you've just had a lot going on recently and you've noticed you're up in that sympathetic activation a lot of the time, so racy thoughts, racing body, sort of rapid heart rate, short breath, maybe a little bit sweaty, feeling a little bit warm, maybe even a bit dizzy, feeling like you have to kind of rush from thing to thing, not really able to slow down. And then maybe at night feeling very, very flat, very, very tired, unmotivated, and like you really just need to collapse. So after those kinds of seasons where our adrenals have been working really, really hard to keep us going and give us lots of energy, it's nice to just do some practices that can help to kind of calm the nervous system. So the practice today is going to be about gently coming into rest and digest. So we're going to take yin yoga, where we hold the poses for every maybe kind of 2-3 minutes a pose, with lots of lovely supports so that we can really relax into them. So rather than being an active stretch, this practice will give you a lovely stretch, but we're doing it in a slightly different way in order to really soothe and calm the nervous system and tell it it's okay to stop releasing adrenaline, stop releasing cortisol, and just come into rest and digest. We're also going to be doing some poses that will activate through the bladder and kidney meridians. So these run from the sole of the foot up the side of the leg and into the kidneys and the adrenal glands that sit right on top of the kidneys in the low back. So we're going to do lots of lovely compression and decompression for the low back, low spine and legs as well. So in terms of props, definitely have a blanket or something kind of soft, a bit of padding for your knees. I've got a bolster here. You could just use a big pile of cushions, anything that feels comfortable to support yourself on. And if you've got a wall available, I've put my mat up against the wall so that I can use the wall for a couple of the poses. This is optional. I will give you options for if you don't have access to a wall, because sometimes we just don't have a spare bit of wall space in our homes. At home, I actually use the front of a great big old wardrobe that I have. So any kind of hard flat surface is grand, but if you don't have one, I'll give you other options. Okay, so let's make a start. We're actually going to start with a little foot rub, just to kind of relax, get started in that relaxing. So this really doesn't matter how you do this. Grab hold of one of your feet and just start to give it a nice rub. And I just kind of like to work from the toes backwards. And this can be a really nice moment just to start to settle in. Just reflect on how your personal practice has been for you recently. Are there certain aspects of self-care that you know are really necessary for your well-being? Maybe that's nutrition, maybe it's time outdoors, maybe it's nervous system regulation practices, or therapy, or journaling, or spending time with friends, or just getting a little bit of extra sleep. All these things that we know really help us. And how has that been for you recently? Have you been able, in this rushing, busy period, to get the kind of self-care that you need? Or have some of those practices started to slip a little bit? And let's not double down here. We don't need to add guilt or shame into the mix. We're just observing and noticing and maybe making some correlations with, oh yeah, okay, I haven't been sleeping very well, or maybe I've been not being so careful with my diet and actually I am not feeling so great right now. So if there's just anything that occurs to you, let's move to the other foot. This can also just be a really nice moment to check in with how your body is feeling as a whole. You give yourself this little foot rub. I suppose, when was the last time that you paid a lot of attention to your body? You maybe want to think about having a nice warm shower after this practice, putting on some nice body lotion. Maybe you want to schedule a massage for yourself, or just go and ask someone for a bit of a hug. So much of nervous system regulation really is at the level of the body. We experience the dysregulation as emotion and sensation and feeling and thought. that we can do so much for ourselves in stressful times, actually by really focusing on what the body is telling us and what it needs. So just wrapping up with your little foot massage. Just coming to an easy cross-legged pose for a moment, and let's just rub our hands together now and start to generate some heat through the palms of the hands. And once you feel like your palms are getting a little bit warm, just bring them around and place them on the low back, just over the kidneys and over the adrenals. Just let some of that heat seep in there. Maybe give yourself a little rub over that area as well. Perhaps just saying a little thank you to the adrenals for how they've been keeping you going recently. Appreciating what your body has done for you during a busy or stressful season. Maybe taking a few deeper breaths as you do this. Starting to come into your abdomen. Just breathing from as deep as possible and allowing the breath to leave slowly. Come into our first pose. Our first pose is going to be a caterpillar. I'll just turn around so that you can see. So this is going to stretch all the way from the soles of the feet up the back of the legs, through the glutes and into the low back, and even along the spine a little bit. Now, I quite like doing this pose literally just by letting my upper body rest naturally into a curve. No pushing, no pulling. However, you might find that is a little bit much. I quite like that hanging sensation, but if not, this is where you could use some props and actually just allow yourself to kind of drape forward over the props. So piling up the cushions on your lap and letting your head come down. So find the version of the pose that feels right for you today. And remember, this isn't an active stretch, so we're not trying to pull forward or stretch the hamstrings. We're just gently allowing ourselves to roll forward, letting the head be heavy. This is a very passive pose. I've got my hands with the palms facing upward. And I can just feel a slight sensation through the soles of my feet and up through my hamstrings and along the back of my spine and all the way up to my shoulder blades and even a little bit along my neck. And that's fine. That's all I want in this pose. So long as you're feeling a little bit of sensation, a slight feeling of stretch, but nothing that requires you to hold yourself in the position. And certainly no sharp pains or pulling feelings. And that's what we're looking for. And start to come into your breathing, taking slow, deep breaths. We're going to stay here for about 3 minutes. You might notice as you hold this pose for an extended period of time that your upper body starts to curve in a little bit more and get a bit heavy. You naturally come a little bit closer to your knees. Just allowing gravity to do the work for us in this pose. Just see if you can relax even more, maybe loosen up your jaw a little bit. Notice if your shoulders are hunching towards your ears, can you just let them fall back down? Keeping those deep breaths going into the low back. And when you feel ready to come out of this pose, and you can absolutely pause the video to stay a little bit longer if you want. Bring the hands down onto the mat, press into the palms of your hands and roll up very slowly. So slowly straightening from the base of the spine, gradually bringing each vertebrae back on top of the other, bringing the head up, shoulders back and down, blinking the eyes open if you had them closed. And let's just bring the feet to the mat for a moment, and we'll just take a few little windscreen wipers. So just bring the hands out beside you or behind you and just rock the knees over to one side, letting the left hip lift up, and rock them to the other side, letting the other hip lift. And we'll just take about a minute of these gentle movements, just moving at a pace that suits you. Just loosening through the low back here. And when you feel ready, we'll come to our second pose. I'm just going to turn towards you so that you can see this, but there's no reason for you to shift on the mat. The next pose is going to be a square pose with a twist. So for a square pose, we're bringing the right shin actually stacked on top of the left so that the right foot is on top of the knee. Might have a little gap, that's absolutely fine. What you can do here is roll up the blanket and pop it in underneath, or even put a block in there. If this really doesn't feel accessible, and it can be a lot on the hips, just stagger the right shin in front of the left like this, or you could even just take a little easy cross-legged pose. Whatever feels comfortable for you. And you don't have to have the padding, by the way. If this feels comfortable, you can just do this. We're going to straighten the spine and just turn slightly so that you're facing towards that right foot. You can stay upright at this point. This might be enough of a twist for you. You're just compressing slightly through the low back and getting a stretch through the hips. If you want to take it a little bit further, you can bring your right elbow into the sole of your right foot, make a fist, bring the other left hand on top, and pressing down, you can pull yourself into a slightly deeper twist. So I'm thinking about bringing my head forward, straightening through my spine, slight twist through the low back, keeping my shoulders nice and relaxed. Breathing deeply into whichever twist you've chosen. Stay here for about a minute and a half, and then we'll go to the other side. Keeping your breath nice and long and fluid. Breathing into that little extension through the spine and that nice twist. Try and relax your hips a little bit more. Taking a few more breaths here. And then to let this go, first come up into your upright twist. Then come back to center. Release the legs, just give them a little wiggle, dropping them from side to side before we go to the other side. So find your option for the other side, to be square pose or just staggering your left shin in front of your right, or taking an easy twist, an easy cross-legged position. So find whichever option works best for you. Find your little twist over towards the left foot. Stay here or add that twist, bringing the left elbow into the sole of the left foot, making a fist, right hand on top, turning into that twist. Thinking about length through your spine, breathing deeply and relaxing into the pose as much as you can. Keep relaxing your jaw. Let your hips drop down onto the mat. If your mind starts to wander, just gently bring it back to your breath, back to the sensations in your body. Keep that nice deep breath going. When you're ready to come out of this twist, bring the hands to the mat, bring yourself into that upright twist variation first, and then turn towards the center. Release the legs, give them a little shake out, and just pause for a moment to notice how you're feeling. And then we'll come into our next pose, which is going to be a supported child's pose. So another nice stretch through the low back, but this time coming forward. And I'm going to use the bolster here. So use your cushions or whatever you have available. And just bring yourself so that your big toes are together. Your knees are as wide apart as is comfortable for you. So you'll get a little stretch through the inside of the legs there. Bringing the cushions or the bolster in front of you, and you can actually just lower your belly down over the top. Adjust yourself to find a comfortable position. You can lay one side of the face or the other onto the bolster, or you could even just make a little cushion with your hands, or what I quite like to do is turn palms upwards and bring my forehead to rest in the palms of my hands, which feels very, very soothing for my nervous system. Or you could always just even hug the bolster. So choose whichever option works for you. And then just settling hips towards the heels, starting to come into nice deep breaths again. And feeling that slight extension, that slight tugging on the low spine and the hips as you breathe in deeply. And then seeing if you can relax a little bit more on every exhale. And really allow the bolster to take your weight. Allow yourself just to become heavy on it. And if you haven't been able to be still very much recently, you could just reflect on how it feels for you to be still during this practice. Really allowing the bolster and the props to hold you and do the work for you. Can you relax your spine? Can you relax your hips and your psoas and your tummy? Can you relax your neck and your upper back and shoulders? Can you loosen your jaw? And just allow yourself to relax even a little bit more on the bolster, coming more in contact with it. Knowing just for this practice, you really don't need to do anything. Nowhere to be, nowhere to rush off to. No effort required. And if you had your head on the side, turned one way, just turn the head towards the other side just to give your neck a little bit of a rest. So to come out of this pose, start by taking a few deeper breaths. And then bring your hands underneath your shoulders, pressing into your hands to bring yourself up slowly, shifting the weight back onto the heels. Take a moment, and then we're going to come into our next pose, and this is where I might use the wall. If you don't have a wall, I'll give you the other options. We're just going to turn the bolsters or your cushions round so that they're crosswise across the mat. I'm going to take a seal pose. What I'm going to do is actually walk all the way back until the bolster is about halfway down the mat. Now what I'm going to do using the wall is I'm actually just going to walk my feet up the wall, walking my knees back, and this is why I have the mat here, until I can bring my shins flat against the wall here, and then bring the bolster forward so that I can lower myself down. Just adjust the bolster so it's underneath the underarms, in front of the chest. Wiggle yourself back. Hands can go straight out in front of you. We're in a little supported seal pose. So it's a lovely stretch through the low back, but also through the quads, and the upper back and shoulders. Now, if you don't have a wall available, you can just hold your feet in that position, which means activating through your glutes a little bit. Alternatively, just do the little back bend with your legs straight along the floor. So find a comfortable position for your bolster. Another option here, which is quite nice if you want to be really relaxed, just kind of cross the arms on the bolster. You could even rest your forehead down. You won't get so much of a stretch through the neck and between the shoulder blades, but you'll still get the lower half of the body here. And this is quite nice and relaxing as well, like girl on the beach. So whichever option you want to take, just settle in and start to breathe deeply, finding some stillness, keeping a nice relaxed neck and relaxed jaw. Noticing also how it feels to have so much of the body in contact with a firm surface. I find this pose to be very, very soothing for my nervous system, just having my stomach, my hips, the upper part of my legs really in contact with the floor and this wall behind me. This feels very supportive. And notice how this feels for you. Going to start to come out of this pose. To do this, bring your hands to the mat and then lift yourself up enough so that you can shift the bolster. You can come down just on your forearms, and then you can just drop the legs to one side so you're coming onto your hip. Bring the knees to the chest, and you can come up into a seated position. And let's just pause for a moment, either kneeling or sitting, maybe with your back against the wall. Just for a moment. Again, feeling this firm support behind your back. And then let's come into our last pose, which is legs up the wall. Now, if you don't have a wall available, you just pop your legs up onto a chair, maybe against the sofa, or you could even pop your hips onto the bolster or some blocks and just do waterfall, so elevating your feet into the air with your hips supported. You're going to come and do legs up the wall. Just bring the side of your hips up close to the wall, and then we're just going to come onto our back with our feet up against the wall. Shimmy closer if you would like to, and then bring the arms out to the sides, nice and wide. And ankles just rolling out, feet relaxed. So now we've got this firm surface beneath our back, letting the whole of the upper body get really heavy on the mat. And just letting the wall take the weight of our feet, and our legs are just weightless. Still having this nice pressure against the kidneys in the low back. This is particularly why I like to have this blanket here as well, for a little bit of extra padding for the low back. Let your jaw just be relaxed. Let it unhinge a little bit. Ooh, I don't know if you heard that pop. Taking some deep breaths, and with every breath, see if you can just bring the back of your body even more deeply in contact with the floor beneath you. Feeling this support and feeling this nice drain from your feet down your legs. This is a wonderful pose for the nervous system because it reverses the pressure in your blood. So it causes your heart to have to beat a little bit slower. It's great for just calming you, slowing down a racing heart. It's great for lymphatic drainage. Just see if you can really let go a little bit more. Really focusing on the feeling of being supported and of being still. if you'd like to stay and legs up the wall, you can really stay here for anything up to 15 minutes. I'm going to gently come out. So I'm just going to bring my knees closer towards my chest and then allow myself to rock onto my side and just pause in a little fetal position for a moment. And then using my hands, I'm just going to come up just enough to bring myself back onto my mat, stretching out long for Shavasana. So I do encourage you to end this practice with Shavasana just so that you can really let the whole body relax after some actually quite intense stretches. Make sure that you're nice and cozy and warm here so that you stay relaxed. So just bring a blanket over you or put on socks or a jumper. And then stretch out fully onto the mat. Letting your legs be wide, letting your feet roll out to the side, arms nice and wide, palms facing up. And take a few deep breaths here, just letting them go with a sigh, first of all. Feeling into the whole of the back body, now flat on the mat, the supportive surface underneath you, all the way from the back of the head, behind the shoulders, the shoulder blades, the upper back, the backs of the arms, your hips, your glutes, backs of your legs, your knees, your shins, all the way down to your ankles, your heels. Noticing any little shifts and changes in the body, in the area of the low back, the hips, but also noticing how you're feeling in yourself now. Whether you're feeling just a little bit slower, a little bit more at rest and at ease, a little bit calmer, or perhaps even sleepy. Your heart rate is a bit slower. Your muscles just feel a bit more relaxed. And you can even take a few big yawns here if you wanted, just to help that parasympathetic reaction along a little bit further. Letting yourself relax onto the mat. Letting your breath naturally deepen. And I just encourage you to stay in Shavasana for several minutes. Just allowing yourself to rest and be at ease. And when you do need to get up and carry on with your day, just do it slowly. Stay warm, stay hydrated. Think about what your body needs and take care of yourself as you go back into your life. I hope that you found this practice helpful and supportive. Thank you for practicing with me today.